Alright, what is up? Welcome back everybody to the channel. My name is Pete Summers and I'm a DJ and music producer from Boston, Massachusetts. I've had the opportunity to play at some of the world's popular clubs and open up for some amazing artists and DJs like Diplo, Dylan Francis, Steve Aoki, Tiesto, and so much more. I really wanted to take some time this year to start producing a little more long-form content and really get more in depth with the music production process. So if you haven't caught my other two videos that I posted on this channel before, make sure to go back and check those out after we are done here. But in this video today, I wanted to talk to you about some elements that you can add to your music that will really make it sound professional and will bring it to a completely different level. So without further ado, let's get into Ableton and see what we got. All right, so we have a blank Ableton session here. How I usually start my songs is I'll start with some chords. So I'll do that right now. In future videos, we'll talk about how to really add good swing to your music, but because that isn't the point of this video today, we're just going to use Quantize. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do to really emphasize this sound is to start incorporating atmospheres, effects, drones, ARPs, and other elements to just add texture and fill up the stereo space of this chord progression. So the first thing that I'll do to add texture to a sound is to find or record natural sounds. So that can be anything from leaves, wind, ocean waves, birds chirping, crickets, you name it. You can really pick anything that you would normally hear in the natural world. So in this instance, I'll use this sample I found on Splice of wind through heavy leaves. We can add on some birds chirping. All these elements you want to be at a relatively low volume, so they don't want to be the focal point of it, but you do want to be able to feel and sense these sounds coming in the background of the song. The next thing we'll add is some atmosphere. With the atmospheres, it's more important that you are in key with the song that you're playing. So in this instance, I'm in the key of C minor, and as we see here, our atmosphere is in A, so I'm just going to have to pitch this up 3 semitones so we can get it in the same key. And we'll listen to this together, hear if it sounds any good. Another tonal element that we can add to this sound is some drones that we can add here. An important element about these aspects as well, not only do they need to be relatively low volume, similar to our natural sounds, but I usually like to add some reverb onto these sounds too, so it helps them blend into the background a little more. It can be a little difficult for the listener to really understand where the song is going to go in terms of the rhythm. So another important element that you can add onto your songs is to incorporate a little more percussive and rhythmic elements in the song so the listener can help better anticipate the rhythm that is about to come throughout the rest of the song. You can get as complex or simple with these elements as possible as long as you have something. The other important thing to notice too, if this section is considered our break right now, you probably want to keep it pretty simple so then you have the opportunity to expand that drum section when you get to a drop. So for now, I'm just going to use this shaker loop. Another thing that you can do to add the element of rhythm into your song is to incorporate an ARP that will follow a pattern typically of 1/16 notes. And you can either do this with a sample or it's easy enough to make one on our own. So in this case, let's make one on our own real quick. So now it's a little easier for the listener to really get the beat of this song. As we can hear as we play this. Whereas if we don't have that, it gets a little more ambiguous. Now that we added this ARP, it leads a little more into my next point and really helping this entire section really start traveling and not just be this one static sound. So a key thing that you'll hear a lot of music producers talk about is automation. And for this demonstration, we're going to automate this ARP in order to change sounds over the course of our loop here. Okay, so here we are in Ableton for our pluck that's playing our ARP sound. And as you can see, we have this envelope automating this filter right here. Something that we can do in order to automate this over time is we can put a macro onto this cutoff. So now what you see is it continues to go through this progression. It continues to bounce back. But now as we increase this macro, the sound changes a little bit because now this entire window that the cutoff is moving back and forth from with this envelope is now being shifted over the course of the entire filter. The distance between frequencies stays the same where the envelope is hitting. That frequency range is shifting, so now you get this really cool sound where the cutoff opens up once you open up this macro. So the next thing that we're going to do to change the sound over time as well is to map this macro to this sustain knob right here. So what the sustain knob is doing is because it's all the way down, that is making the pluck sound of the ARP. So it's hitting at a really high volume and then it's immediately getting brought back to negative infinity, which is basically nothing. By mapping this macro as well to the sustain, we'll actually turn the sustain up, and now instead of it hitting at the high volume and then being ducked down, it's going to be hitting at the volume and then staying at that volume for the entire length of the played note. Best to demonstrate by playing it is you hear here. Now another thing that we'll do in order to change this sound a little over time is actually not going to be connected to this macro at all. In fact, I'm going to use one of these LFOs. The LFO is essentially the same thing as this macro is doing, but it creates a segmented automation over time if you map it to something. So right now we have it at this 1/4 beat length. So that means, let's say in your typical EDM fashion, if you were to sidechain something and you hear this really cool pumping effect, that would look like this. So what this is doing, if we were to map this LFO to this volume, it would start at a very low volume and then it would go up. And every 1/4 beat, it would continue to do this motion in volume every single time. So you'll hear that here. So what we're going to do with the LFO in this instance is we're actually going to map it to the sync button right here. So we're going to drag this LFO1 onto the sync button. If this isn't showing up for you, it's just because I had already changed this already. Their default is off, and then we're going to move it to the sync button right here, no window. Now, as you'll hear here, we'll play it right now just to see what we have. Now that's a little aggressive for me, so what you do is you go to this tiny little blue curve here that you see on top of sync, and you can just turn this down in order to change the parameters of how far in this it's going to go. So let's turn this up a little bit, and then we'll also hit Shift, Alt, and click, which actually creates, it has its start from the middle, so then it kind of goes back and forth, but its start point will always be in the middle instead of one side going to the other. So we'll do this, and we'll turn down this parameter just a little bit. As you'll here, once we have it up here, it'll change the sound over the course of the entire time, but it'll be at a frequency that will stay consistent. And then you can also change the length of which this is happening. All right, great. Now, there's nothing happening with this macro because we didn't automate it yet, but we have the tools in place in order to do that. So all we really need to do in this is go over to our timeline, hit A so that we can get to our automation section. Well, you're going to see all these dotted red lines. You're going to click 1 at 0 and then 1 at 100%. So now over here, as we play this, so this is a great way to really build tension in the beginning of your song, keep the listener engaged and anticipating something coming up. This leads to our next point. The use of transitional elements is key in really giving your listeners a clue to the arrangement of your song as well. And this is something as simple as risers, snare rolls, down sweeps, and anything else that you can really use to create tension and release tension throughout a loop or a part of your song in order to lead into the next section. So for this, we're going to use a sweep down to start it with. We'll use a sweep up to end it with. We'll use a low impact to start it with. And they even have some transitions and sweep transitions already existing in some of these sample packs. To end it, we'll use a tonal transition in the key of the song that we're playing in. And we'll line this up right on beat here. And then let's end this loop with a crash. And actually, let's add a riser too, just for demonstration purposes. All right, so here are our transition elements. And everything together sounds like this. So to recap, there's plenty of things that you can do in your own music to make it sound even more professional and grab the listener's attention the entire way through. In this example, we used probably what I would expect to be a break or an intro to a song, but this applies to anywhere in the song as well. If you were to create a drop, it's still important to use transitional elements and automation to really keep the song flowing throughout the entire way, because it's really easy for an idea to become stale over time. It doesn't matter how amazing your melody is or your chord progression, people want to hear changing sounds, and it helps them anticipate things that are about to happen for the rest of the song and continue to grab their interest. So once again, natural sounds, atmospheres, drones, arps, percussive elements like shakers and top loops, transitions like sweeps, risers, and impacts, and also using automation to change the sound of some elements over time is key in order to make your song sound more professional. I hope you all found this useful today. If you are working on something and you want to hear my feedback, feel free to DM it to me on Instagram at Pete Summers Music. I'd be happy to give you some feedback and coach you through how you can make your idea sound more professional. And that'll do it for this video. Make sure to subscribe to stay updated on every single weekly video that I'll be coming out with. I also live stream every single Tuesday night and go through my production process, as well as listen to demos for feedback. So make sure to tune in for those. And that is all for me. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.